Number one, philosophical knowing. Number two, transfigured knowing, transfiguration. Number three, anthropological knowing. Number four, empirical knowing. These are the four doors, the four ways of knowing the continuity of consciousness. So this last one I just talked about, right? The realization that I've got to complete my lifetime, the direct knowing in my body that I'm not complete at the end of my life. I'm not done. That sense of incompleteness and that desire to complete, to make it whole, that is an anthropological knowing of the continuity of consciousness, of reincarnation, of the fact that I incarnate again. But here's the thing. I don't just incarnate again in this kind of bland, generic way. I incarnate again, not as Mark or Jack, not in my personality, but in my unique self. Talking about reincarnation, is that right? Last week, we did a special kind of report from the board conclave. And the board conclave is just ending we have a beautiful process here at the center where in the month of June, slowly the house and the surrounding area fills up. Slowly it goes from like just Christina and I are here and then another person until we've got about 50 people here. And then people start leaving. And then it goes, down back to Kik and I being here. It was just really stunning. And if you can imagine, those of you who have been at the mystery school is about, can we initiate into the mystery? Does that make sense? Can we initiate into the mystery? Can we initiate into the mystery? So mystery schools, we get initiated into the mystery, right? Together. And we do this very, very, very deep dive into a new part of the story of value in this kind of extended 5-day full-on immersion, initiation into the mysteries to try and access this new story of value, to respond directly to the suffering implicit in the negative potentialities of the meta crisis. We experience ourselves in this time between worlds and time between stories, poised between utopia and dystopia. And then we do this very, very deep and profound, right, unimaginably also beautiful and ecstatic and yet urgent, right, entry into for 5 days, for many, many hours a day, into the mysteries to articulate, in this kind of Da Vinci-like style, right? Da Vinci kind of style, maybe Da Vinci combined with a kind of, very deep interior science, Eleusinian mysteries, right? We enter the mysteries and we try and enact this new story of value because we understand that only a new story of value actually changes the future, right? Shifts, right? When we create from within a new story of value, it becomes the shared language of the human being. When we initiate a human being and a humanity, which is an expression, an incarnation of a fundamentally new story that is the most accurate representation of the oldest story. Right? And let me just say what I mean by that. In other words, reality is a story, and reality has plot lines. And reality is not merely a fact. It is a story and it is a love story, but that love story evolves, right? And so the evolution of that love story is what we mean by a new story. And at certain times in history, the love story disappears altogether and it becomes a story of surface power. At other times, the love story becomes a story of we just love our little small tribal group and we dominate everyone else. But when we clarify the love story, when love itself deepens, when love intensifies, when the way we love deepens, where who we love and the circle of who we love widens, when we move from just egocentric love, loving our own survival people, to, tribal love, we love our tribe, to world-centric love, we love every human being, to cosmocentric love, we're in love with the whole thing, every animal, and with the whole evolutionary process itself. And then so that's this evolution of love. But that's insufficient in this time of metacrisis. We need to actually deepen our understanding of love itself. We need to understand that love is not just, right, a psychological category, as we would say in modernity. It's not just a social construct, as we would say in postmodernity. Love is the heart of existence itself. but it's not the heart of existence owned by the Christians or the Jews or the Muslims or the Aboriginals or this or that indigenous tribe or this or that shamanic group. It's the love which is the heart of existence itself that exists in all of us. Right? There is no provincialism. There's not the Sufis got it right and the Hindus got it wrong, some provincial clash. No, there's a deeper truth. There's a deeper shared truth. And that deeper shared truth is both eternal. It's rooted in the structure of cosmos itself, and it's evolving. So that's what we do at the Mystery School. And kind of all year in one mountain, we lead up to the Mystery School. Does that make sense? I want to add this sentence. Does that make sense, everyone? And it's here in one mountain, many paths, who we must become. We're leading up to the Mystery School. So we do individual segments, subsegments of the new story of value. And then when we get to the Mystery School, we try and in some sense almost like merge, integrate like the whole year together in this kind of, ecstatic explosion of study, spirit, mad love, honor, music, celebration, urgency, ecstasy, trembling, right? All of that happens in the initiation. All of that happens in the initiation of the Mystery School. The board conclave is different. We've been doing these board conclaves as long as the Mystery School, maybe even longer. We've been doing the board conclave since 2009 or 10. That's 15 years, 16 years. And at the board conclave, we don't come to initiate each other, to be initiated by by reality, by Gnosis. We come as initiates, right? And we come, we're already in some sense inside. And we come to talk, we come to deepen, we come to meet each other, we come to be together, but we also come to strategize. And we also come to unfold. And we also come to try and envision how will we implement. Does that make sense, everyone? How will we actually enact this new story of value and download it into the very source code of culture? Does that make sense? Okay. So this year, and there's a particular thing I'm going to do with you. I want to tell you all a story today, and we're going to be talking about reincarnation. But I just want to just give you a sense, if I can, just so you can kind of feel, if you can, right? And anyone who's new, right? Like welcome. So you can feel the board conclave. And anyone who comes to the board conclave, meaning they're really taking a seat at the table and they're contributing in some real way. Some people contribute, a kind of in a kind of, classical funding way. Other people fund with their energy and time and, just pouring in of the commitment of their creativity. And so everyone at the board meeting is saying, I want to have, at the board conclave is saying, I want to have a seat at the table. And, neither myself nor Zach, we don't run the organization. It's a formal, board with a formal board structure, and the board, has minutes and makes decisions. And it's been that way for 15 years. But it's much deeper than just a board. It's a coming together of, if I would say this in a kind of positive way, it's a coming together of a group of people who say, we're willing to humbly, in complete service and devotion, take responsibility for the whole thing. Right? And that doesn't mean we arrogantly take responsibility. It doesn't mean we say, oh, we're the only ones, but it means that we're actually going to feel the whole and take responsibility for the whole. So that's kind of amazing, right? So I just want to share with you just two notes before I step in. So two notes, two kind of crazy notes here. Okay. So first I want to show everybody something. Okay. So I'm going to take a little walk with you, which we never do in one mountain, but I'm going to do it anyways. Okay. So can you just tell me, Krista, tell me if I'm okay. You can see me. I'm going to try and take a walk. And so we actually put up on the wall, right? On the wall here, right at the center, we put up a beautiful painting, right? Which I wanted to share with everyone, which Elena, who's the artist, actually, right, decided to place in the center just for kind of this insane inspiration. And it's a painting of the journey of love, the journey of Eros value as it moves through all 157 of Shakespeare's sonnets. So I wanted to be able to show it to you on the wall. So is everybody ready? Tell me in the chat box if you're ready. Okay, you ready? Here we go. Okay. Just tell me if you can see it. Hold on, how about that? I know you can't see it yet. There. It's a funny angle, but can you see it? Let's see if I can see it this way. Hold on. There we go. Is that amazing? That is 16 pieces. 16 pieces. Can you catch that? 4 times 4. And you can see the faces. That's kind of this big, beautiful, gorgeous, kind of inspired moment I wanted just to share with everyone. Is that amazing? Anyone amazing? Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Now then, hold on for 1 second. We're in kind of just so you can feel the board meeting. So I'm going to get crazy, everybody, for a second. Let's get crazy for a second, okay? So that also is on the wall. That's Lena also, which is Luke 15, the prodigal son. But let me, if I can show you, can you hear me? Am I okay? So Krista led this incredible team, many of which who are on one mountain right now. And we made this, we keep talking about the great library. So we made this incredible move forward. So everyone remember this book? This is First Principles and First Values. Is that right? First Principles and First Values. There we go. So there's a new edition of it out, which has really important material on value and anti-value, has the list of first principles and first values, and it's kind of like a reader primer to kind of tell the whole story. It's a very good entry point. So that's one. Okay. But now look at this. So that's kind of an early book. Now, early rooting, Return to Eros, early book, right? Kind of structures the story, right? Your Unique Self. You got Your Unique Self, right? Structures the story in a really important way. Really important couple of books by my beloved Zach, our beloved, right? Education of Time Between Worlds and kind of metrics. These are early groundings of the story. This book we're about to re-release, Tears, right? A whole book on tears grounds the story. Then, of course, we have Role Mate, Soulmate, and Wholemate, right? And the evolution of love. So I just want everyone to feel when you join who we must become, you're joining the process of creating this great library. And I want to just completely madly invite, if you want to edit, you want to research, we are creating this Da Vinci library together for the future in order to enact a potential story of value, which is a story of value for a shared global and ultimately galactic vision, without which we can't talk to each other, without which we're lost in a global intimacy disorder, without which we actually won't survive. We say every time we've got global challenges which require global coordination. You can't have global coordination without some sense of global resonance. You can't have global resonance, right? You can't have it, right? Without global coherence. You can't create global coherence. It can't be done without intimacy. A shared intimacy, and a shared intimacy is based on a shared value, not values, but underneath our diverse values, there's a shared field of value that we live in, from which we create, from which we argue, from which we actually create paradoxes. But without a shared field of value, you have polarization, a global intimacy disorder, which creates a story which is a success story, which is rivalrous conflict governed by win-lose metrics, and the whole thing collapses. So kind of deep ancient rooting, and this is the Solomon lineage, radical Kabbalah on the wisdom of Solomon that we talk about, to kind of, intense fine wine academic books. 2014, this is Sally Kempton's version of the book. These are Sally Kempton's little markings. Loving Your Way to Enlightenment. These are kind of early books, and these themselves, are rooted in, very early books, Soul Prince and The Mystery of Love. This just gives you a sense of it, right? It's not all of them, but it gives you a sense. All of that, hold on 1 second. And you need this one in the story also. It's called Self. And if you remember our friend Andrew Cohen, who just passed, a beautiful man, this compares our unique self thought with his evolutionary thought. And it's a very important key book, part of the Unique Self group. So that gives you a little bit of the ground. Now I need a drum roll. Do we have a drum roll? You want to get crazy, everybody? This is just like intimate moment, post-board conclave. We come to the board conclave not to be initiated. It's not the mystery school, but as initiates. And I just want to invite everyone who's on the call now, be with us through the year. Find your way in. This is yours. It's not ours. It's ours together. Take your seat at the table and, raise your sword and step in some real and substantive and concrete way. So ready for this? Do we have a drum roll? I'm just going to go very quickly, okay? Just take a look at this. Book 1, Barbie, Hamas, and Oppenheimer. Book 2, Existential Risk of Technology and the Death of Our Humanity. From Polarization to Paradox, Entering the Field of Value. The Infinity of Intimacy. Story is Real. They're getting crazy? The Path of Outrageous Love. Value is Real. From conspiracy theories to the ultimate conspiring of reality. Evolution of Intimacy. Towards a new politics of love. First principles and first values. The journey to Homo, Amor. Confessing your greatness. Evolving public culture, shame and wounding as portals to potency and potential. Evolutionary church, reclaiming love as religion. Human being as a unique letter in the cosmic scroll. Healing the global intimacy disorder. Conscious evolution, a love story. From pain to purpose, the dignity of personal need. Playing a larger game, incarnating the power of evolutionary love. Is everyone getting it? Is this insane? The dignity of desire, transforming shame in victimhood, right? We are God's unique intimacy, restoring allurement and intimacy as core structures of cosmos. Okay, world religion as a context for diversity. That's a big one, okay? Stay with me. Dignity of desire. We did that one. God is intimate. The real is not indifferent. A planetary awakening of love through unique self symphonies. Homo, Amor, and unique self. You with me? Who's with me? Who's with me here? Love or Die. Volume 1 of 4, by the way. Okay, just a couple of more just to get a sense of it. What is that? From the cosmorotic universe, cosmorotic humanism. Why is there something rather than nothing? Telling the story of the evolving value in response to existential risk. This is the mystery schools. The intimate cosmos. Lines and circles, the erotic cosmos. The amorous cosmos, welcome home, science and reality. A new story of value. You begin to get the idea. So why am I sharing all this with you? So you actually get, that is what, when we become part of who we must become, we're creating this together. We're in Florence. We're gathered around the table, right? There's teams of researchers, editors, right? We study together. We call them Holy of Holies, where we talk to each other, either one-on-one or in groups. There's a group Holy of Holies. There's the Who We Must Become community. There's the board conclave where we come as initiates to vision the future, right? There is the mystery school where we come, all of us, to reinitiate ourselves in this tradition of mystery schools, the Eleusinian mysteries. And we're literally trying to create, right, the library of the future. So you might say, people don't read, don't create a library. So first off, we need to read. And we need to actually create the kind of new sacred texts, if you will. And in the sacred text, there's going to be a whole slew of books by David J. Temple. There's a bunch of authors who are writing individual projects and individual pieces, right? And then we want to have digital expressions, right? Digital clips that lead to each one of the books. So we're creating this David J. Temple together. You know, some of these books I'm writing, some of them I'm writing with Zach, right? There's a whole slew that I'm writing, you know, with as David J. Temple, right? I'm writing with Lena, right? We're doing kind of just key fashioning, and with Kirsten and with Talia and with Krista. Obviously, Dr. Christina Kincaid is kind of blowing away the Outrageous Love Project and the Phenomenology of Eros, which is, I don't know, some 18 volumes, right? You know, and creating kind of a movie around that, et cetera, et cetera. And the Unique Self Institute with Claire Molinaire is kind of unique selfing, and David's at play, and et cetera, et cetera. And Jacqueline's kind of organizing and curating, and Jamie's doing what Jamie's doing, right? And the list goes on and on. Okay. But, and Christina Amelon is kind of holding, and right, in other words, and so and Kathy Brownback is kind of Harariing and board sharing. And I'm just going to stop now in the middle, and I apologize if I didn't get to like 50 names. But you get what's happening? So the invitation, the reason I'm going through all this is I just want to just tenderly, right, invite you to step in. Why? Because we've lost our ability to be sincere with each other. Everyone thinks that if I'm invited to something, right, somebody must be selling me something. We're not selling anything. We're being sincere. We're in this kind of deep, sincerity together, right? We can actually feel together, right, the suffering, and we can feel, right, the pain, and we can feel the voices of the future calling us, and we can feel also the promise, and we can feel the potency, and we can feel the possibility, right? And we say to each other, right, the promise will be kept. The promise will be kept, right? And I want to just like my heart to your heart, anyone who's on this call today or who's listening to the replay, right, who wants to step in, right, who wants to get involved, right, who wants to contribute and resource in some way that's real. And literally, right, it's not often you get an invitation to take your seat at the table of history. And it's not simple, and it's not a slogan, and it's filled with challenge. But we're in together. Right? We're in together. We're doing this together. So it's just a big deal. Right? And I want to just invite you to it in the deepest and most profound way. So anyone who feels like, if you feel it, just if you're in, just so we can feel it together in the chat box. So just write, I'm going to write, I'm in, right, in the chat box. Just I'm in, so we can just feel each other on the inside. It's like a crazy, insane joy. I'm in, right? I'm in, right? I feel it. I'm in, right? Like, thank you. I'm in. I'm writing it also. I am in. I'm in. I'm on the inside of the inside. We're in this together. We're doing this. We're visioning this. We're raising our swords. We're opening our arms to embrace, line and circle together. And we're creating a line and circle, a Eros Gamos of possibility. Like we're in. We're in. To be in is everything. To be in is everything. Like we're in. We're in. Who's in? Are we in? I'm in. I'm in. Right? I'm in. It's like, it's everything, my friends. It's everything, which is everything, which is everything, which is everything. Wow. I want to, with your permission, do one thing today. I want to talk to you about reincarnation, and in some kind of deep and beautiful way, and go the next step. Now, how many people have been in any of our talks on reincarnation before? Just show of hands. Who has not been? Let me say a little differently. Is there anyone who's not been at any of our talks on reincarnation? So a couple of people. Okay, welcome. So I'm going to share with you a story today. It's short, but let's see if we can get there. Okay. So what we talked about when we first talked, we've done, I believe, 3 or 4 conversations around reincarnation, and we're talking about reincarnation as part of the context of the new story of value. 1, and just like a several point recapitulation. 2, we're talking about reincarnation as the realization, the scientific realization, that reincarnation is a valid, accurate description of cosmos, right? Meaning that when I encounter death and I enter into the valley of death, and then I walk through the door, the portal, which is death, it's not the end of the story. Right? Death is a night between 2 days, and that is not a kind of dogmatic claim. That's an empirical reality. Death is not the end. That the notion that death is a night between 2 days, that there's a continuity of consciousness, is supported in 3 distinct ways. And I'm only going to talk about one of them today, right? One of the ways it's supported is in very deep philosophical reflection. Does that make sense? In other words, when I analyze dualism and I analyze materialism, right? Dualism being the idea that there's a material world and there's a spiritual world. They are separate worlds. The spiritual world enters in and controls the material world. That's classical dualism, right? That's one vision of reality. There's another vision of reality, which is called materialism. The world's only material, right? And neither of those hold by themselves. They're insufficient. The world's not split between dual material and spirit, two separate worlds. And the world's not just material. And then there's a third possibility, idealism. The world is only spirit, and the material world's not real at all. Each one of those suffers from very, very great flaws. Actually, the one that suffered from the greatest philosophical flaws is materialism, which doesn't work for a lot of reasons. But if you study philosophically, right, the nature of reality, you philosophically come to the conclusion that consciousness is fundamental in reality. As Max Planck wrote, consciousness is fundamental. Schrödinger, right, the quantum mechanic, kind of pioneers, right, speak in different ways about consciousness being fundamental. And Lena, I got that book you mentioned to me about Schrödinger. It's up in the restroom upstairs, and I'm taking a look at it. It's kind of How I Think About Things book. So consciousness is fundamental, and consciousness doesn't end at death's door. So the material world is also real. Consciousness clothes itself in the material world, but consciousness is fundamental. And so therefore, when the material manifestation of this world disappears, consciousness does not. And that is, I believe, the best understanding we have of reality today in the sciences. And even writers like let's say, Anaka Harris, who wrote a 2023 book, kind of tending towards the classical view of consciousness being an epiphenomena of the brain. Consciousness is actually not fundamental. It emerges from the brain. It's an epiphenomena, a kind of not ultimately real, but just a kind of electric expression of the brain. Has even she's shifted her position. And in a recent, set of, neuroscience conversations, I think 12 conversations, in her 12th conversation, she comes to the conclusion, actually, I think consciousness might well be fundamental. Quite a dramatic shift, right, from a person who was really at the center of kind of classical materialism. Philip Goff, a very, very important kind of philosopher of science, right, both on the neuroscience sides and the general philosophy of science. Philip Goff, Goff, did a great paper where he talked and engaged in conversation the 15 different positions on this problem, kind of in the classical academy, and engaged all of them and came to this conclusion of this fundamental structure of consciousness, which then tells you that there's continuity of consciousness, that consciousness doesn't end, right? And consciousness is not dependent on the material body, right? It's housed and held by the material body, and the material itself is conscious, right? The material itself, matter, the root word of matter is mother. It's the matrix, it's mother, and mother is she. Mother is the living presence. So matter is the matrix, it's mother, it's the living presence. We've said many times, the thing is the word in Hebrew, the davar, the thing is the word. Okay, so in terms of deep philosophical reflection and deep kind of, right, we get to this conclusion that there's a continuity of consciousness. That's one. Two, in terms of realization, and it's when I actually practice. It's different, right? Mystical realization. When I do the practice of Gnosis, right? Whether that is I'm a whirling dervish Sufi engaged in the intensity of dancing, or I'm doing, the sun dance, right? Or I'm in ecstatic prayer for 30 days at a time, or I'm in Dogen's meditation, or I'm in some form of profound, right, meditative practice of some other kind. There's a multiplicity of practices across lineages, but virtually all the practices lead to the same realization. And so it's not a philosophical contemplation. That's drawer one. The second is the mystical realization of the continuity of consciousness. That's two. That works so far, everybody? That's two. Three, there is what I call a third door, the common sense knowing of the continuity of consciousness. Okay? Now, the common sense knowing is not, I just know it. It's actually if I reflect, but it's not, stay very close to me, my friends. It's not a philosophical reflection on dualism or materialism or idealism or panpsychism, right? Or what we call pan-interiority. It's not a philosophical reflection. It's not a mystical realization in this deep kind of transfiguration practice. A mystical realization is where I transfigure my body, heart, and mind, and I have full and direct access to the mysteries, and I realize the continuity of consciousness. That's the second door. There's a third door, and the third door is common sense. But by common sense, I mean, is everyone tracking here? It's an anthro-ontological knowing, meaning I know in my body, I can get direct access to this continuity, right? You tracking? Does that make sense, everyone? I know it. It's anthro-ontologically. I know it. It's just when I follow my own inner experience. So let me just give you an example of this that we've talked about before. I'll give you two examples, but they're good examples. One example would be, I know that justice is a key dimension of reality. Does that make sense? I know justice is a key dimension of reality. One. Two, I know justice is the rightness of reality. It should be just. Reality should not be, right, unfair, right? There's something wrong if reality is unfair. Does that make sense to everyone? Right? There's something wrong, right, if we live in a reality which is unfair. Does that make sense? That's two. Three, I know that for most people in the world, right, there is not justice within one incarnation. Does that make sense? I know that for most people in the world, right, most of the time, right, there is not justice within one incarnation. Does that make sense? Who does that make sense for? Does that make sense? Right, for most people in the world, most of the time, I'm a Hutu, right, killed by Tutsis, or Tutsis killed by Hutus in Rwanda, or I've been lynched in the Deep South, right, or just any one of 1,000 things, right, where a person's life is cut short abruptly, or a person suffers their entire life, right, and there's unfairness and there's betrayal and it's never set right in one lifetime. That happens all the time. So if justice is the rightness of reality, right, we know there should be justice. We can feel it in our body. There should be justice. Reality should be fair. We can feel that. Reality should be fair. One. Two, reality is not fair within a period of one lifetime. So that automatically tells me anthro-ontologically, in my body, I know it's not over when it's over. That's Harry Chapin that we cited before, right? The singer who always sings, in one of his songs, all my life's a circle. And I have this funny feeling that we'll all be together again. And that ultimately there's what they call in Hinduism, right? This kind of sense of a karmic will. There's a karma, meaning there's a balancing. Things work out, right, over the course of lifetimes, right? There's a righting of the injustices. Does that make sense? That's a third kind of knowing. That's an anthro-ontological knowing. Now, sometimes you get that through this kind of philosophical reflection we just did, but other times you get it just by you look at something, right? So I'll just give you an example here. This is a picture, tell me if you can see it, of, my son Zion when he was young, and of Mariana Kaplan, his awesome mother, and of Sally Kempton, right? The great Sally Kempton, the great teacher. Now, I look at Sally. I just look at her directly in this picture. And Sally's not with us. Her body's not with us, right? I remember when I heard about the cremation, which many people do. That means that this body, right, as it lives right now, doesn't exist. And so that embodiment, that manifestation doesn't exist. And yet I have direct access to the knowing in my body, anthro-ontologically, that Salliness still exists. KK, Christina Kincaid, my beloved partner, was just telling me about, we were talking last night about her mom. My mother is very sick now, and let's wish her complete healing. And she's at a critical point, in her healing process. And so we were talking about Christina's mother, and she was talking about, her mother on her deathbed. And so KK has a direct knowing, which she says to me all the time. She can access her mother directly. She has a direct, clear access. She looks at a picture of her mother, and it's very clear that although that embodiment doesn't live, her mother lives. But it's not a mystical realization because I've transfigured. It's not a philosophical knowing. It's a direct anthro-ontological, immediate, embodied common sense. It's a common sensual sense making that we have. Okay. So that's a a third way to know about the continuity of consciousness. But there's another way, there's a fourth way. And the fourth way is based on the empirical evidence. What I've done, and this is all for the new people, right? What I've done in the last several weeks is I've focused actually on the empirical evidence. We've looked at the empirical evidence, and we looked at a number of cases from one researcher among many, Ian Stevens, at the University of Virginia, who gathers these multiple cases, about several thousand, which clearly point to the continuity of consciousness. Now, the stories are always about a child, who aged 2, 3, or 4, remembers a different lifetime in some village a couple of thousand kilometers away. And Ian Stevens' team, starting in the mid-50s, would then kind of come to the village, and they would investigate who's the child and what's the child remembering, and are there any hidden connections between this child and that other village? And then they would go to this other village, and they would see, do the people that the child's describing really exist? And they did. And was the child's description of them accurate? And it was. And is the house that the child is describing growing up in as he described it? Yes, it was. Often you'd have a case where the house was painted red, and the child would say, and they would take the child to the city, right, to actually see what the child remembered. And the child would see the house that he grew up in, and the house had been painted red. And the child would say, oh, when I grew up, it wasn't red, it was green. And they would ask the people, yes, it was green when the child grew up, right? So this enormous investigation that pretty clearly, beyond pretty close to a shadow of a doubt, made it empirically clear, empirical evidence, that there is a continuity of consciousness, that there is some form of life after death. Now, to be clear, this evidence doesn't tell you that every person reincarnates. It says that reincarnation is a possibility, right? And in these particular cases, right, there was often a child who died young, or a child that died violently. There was some radical interrupting of the life in some way, and there was some sense, therefore, that the life was incomplete. And many, although not all, but many of Stevens' cases, right, are of that nature. So Stevens' research doesn't point to a kind of universal reincarnation. It says that reincarnation is a real feature of cosmos. Does that make sense, everybody? Who's with me? Does that make sense? Are we okay? We okay? Does that make sense? So what we've now done is we've pointed to 4 ways of knowing, right? The fourth being empirical, right? And then we pointed out that this empirical way of knowing that we've talked about in these, right, previous sessions, the empirical way of knowing, right, based on, let's say, Stevens' research through this particular door of reincarnation, doesn't tell us that everyone reincarnates, right? It tells us that reincarnation is a real structure of reality, and that's empirically undeniable. Right? Does that make sense? So far, so good? So I just want to add one thing today. I was actually going to tell you 2 or 3 stories of a completely different kind from completely different sources, which are reincarnation stories. And I will do that when we pick up the reincarnation conversation. We will absolutely 1,000% do that. And we may do that next week or the week after. We may have a special topic for next week. But I wanted to get to share with you those stories. Does that make sense? There's 4 different doors, right, to Gnosis, to knowing this continuity of consciousness. Now, the reason it's important to know, so there are 2 things I want to say today. Why is it important to know? Because you experience your life entirely differently. So let's say I'm 60 years old. Let's say I'm 64. Let's say I'm 42. Let's say I'm 35. When you're 20, you're not thinking about anything. Sorry. Right? But although you are, I was thinking about it when I was 20. Say, I guess you can be. That's not true. But the more deeply you reflect on your life, and the more accurately you reflect on it, potentially the more powerful, the more beautiful, the more good, the more true, the more potentiated you become. So let's say I'm 60, right? And I think, okay, I've got, 2 years left. I've got 5 years. I've got 10. I've got 15 years. I've got 20. I've got 25. I don't know. But I've got a period of time left. So if I basically feel like, okay, what's left is this next 25 years or whatever it is, then I will decide to spend it in a particular way. Whatever that particular way is. But if I understand that this 25 years is a gateway to the future, does that make sense? Right? It's right. 72, David, that's perfect. If I'm 72, this is perfect. David, this is for you. If I'm 72 and I think the next year, 2, 5, 10, 15, 20, right, is a gateway to the future, I'm going to experience what I do in an entirely different way. If I actually have the direct realization that in this lifetime, I have the possibility, literally in every moment, to write the script of the next lifetime. And that's the core of the Solomon lineage, and it's the core of the lineages in general, that in this lifetime, I am writing the script of the next lifetime. So this lifetime is not an end game by itself, and it's not a zero-sum end game. It's an end game which is, or it's a fabric of reality in which my story is connected to all other stories, and my story is connected to all past stories, and my story is connected to all future stories. So how I act in the next day, month, hour, minute, year, 2 years, 5, 10, etc., is not how I fill up that time to become most comfortable, although I should have some depth of comfort, which gives me dignity, which allows me to create, absolutely critical. But the goal is to actually be in a place where I'm in radical joy because I'm both creating the present, I'm honoring the past, and I'm creating the future. So if I actually have a direct experience of creating the future, then I experience reality in an entirely different way. So I have to have, as Homo Amor, which again, if you're new, Homo Amor is the name we give for the emergence of a new human and a new humanity in response to the meta crisis. That's a core structure of thought, which I'm not going to unpack now, but just like there's a first Big Bang, which explodes in matter, and there's a second Big Bang, which explodes in life, and there's a third Big Bang, which explodes in the depth of the self-reflective human mind, we don't end with the third Big Bang, right? Reality continues evolving. Love continues evolving. Identity continues evolving. And I wake up to a fourth Big Bang when I realize I'm not just a Homo sapien. I don't just, right, live with kind of practical wisdom or even kind of psychological wisdom or even some general spiritual wisdom. I'm actually Homo Amor. I am actually the Amorous Cosmos in person. I'm reality's love story in person in my love story, right? I am the cosmoerotic humanist. I am the cosmoerotic universe in person, right? The evolutionary impulse of all that is beats personally in my irreducible unique self. I feel all that is. I impact all that is. All that is impacts me. I'm part of the whole, and the whole is moving through me. That's the new human and the new humanity. That's the fourth Big Bang, right? That's the new story of value. But to be Homo Amor, I need to understand that it's not just that I'm the amorous cosmos in person in this lifetime. I am in my continuity of consciousness, in my evolution, in the evolution of my unique self. I am evolving the cosmos. So just like there's a continuity of consciousness in cosmos, there's a continuity of consciousness in my personal life, which is aligned, which is an expression of the plot line of the continuity of consciousness in cosmos. Let me see if I can say that even more clearly. This is the last piece. Let me see if I can say that even more clearly. So I'm a unique self. My unique self means I have a unique contribution that needs to be made. I have a unique gift to give. How we always say it, a unique poem to write, a unique song to sing, a unique offering to offer up on the altar, a unique sacrifice, a unique joy, a unique way of being and becoming, a unique celebration. That unique celebration, that unique being, that unique transformation, which is my life, for most people isn't accomplished in one lifetime. And Lena, love, this is for you. So it's not just that I reincarnate. This is how the Solomon lineage understands it. And it's also how certain dimensions of Cosmos Shaivism understand it. And it also appears in other lineage traditions in some very, very beautiful ways, right? Particularly some of the indigenous traditions. It's not just that I reincarnate, as in many of the Ian Stevens cases, when my lifetime was cut short in an obvious way. right? I was shot, I was murdered, right? I drowned, right? Tragically, right? I got sick, right? These are, right? My life was obviously cut short. And so then I reincarnate to complete it. But there's another sense in which my life is cut short, which is I didn't fulfill my mission, right? I didn't complete my transformation, right? I didn't give my gift. I didn't live the fullness of my unique story. I didn't experience everything that I need to experience and learn everything I needed to learn and dance every dance I needed to dance and sing every song I needed to sing, right? And love at the depth that I needed to love and cry with the tears that needed to be shed and laugh with the kind of belly laugh and peals of laughter that needed, right, to emerge for me. It didn't happen, and it needs to happen. And it didn't happen in one lifetime. So I come back, I reincarnate in order to complete my unique tikkun, Tikkun, which is my unique fixing. So in Luria, I'm born a Tinuk, Tinuk. Tinuk, Tinuk. Maybe someone will put in the chat box. They'll be kind to us. Okay. I'm born a Tinuk, Tinuk, and I want to spell it specifically that way. Right? It means a baby. But if I respell that same word, it's Tikkun. Tikkun, which means my fixing. So I'm born as a Tinok, as a baby, to do my tikkun, to do my fixing. So my life is about my unique transformation. That's why I'm alive. I am alive. If there is a universal wisdom in the world, in the great lineage traditions, right, at the very depth of reality, not the provincial fights between religions, we're not up for that. That we need to leave behind, but there's a shared deeper truth, right? That all the traditions share. And, it's funny, my dear friend, Kathy Brownback showed me a text where, this is something I've been saying in one version or another for decades, where one of the leading kind of atheists in America just did this kind of, doesn't matter who it is, and don't write it in the chat box, but just kind of said, oh, right, when I've told everyone I'm against religion, I really meant the provincial fights, but actually there's a shared deeper truth. And by the way, the reason he said that, which was, he was pretending that was always his position, which of course it wasn't, right? And he didn't quite have the audacity to say, wow, I got it wrong, but that's okay. But the reason his position was shifting was because he had this deep realization. I'm sure I understand why it shifted. It shifted because he had this very deep realization that we won't make it through without a shared deeper truth. Does that make sense to everyone? Does that make sense to everyone? In other words, people used to think 25 years ago, hey, we'll make it through. We'll just be decent. We'll be good to each other. We're all going to be naturally moral. People are inherently good. Turns out that's not true. People are naturally good. People are not naturally good. People are inherently good. They're not naturally good. Goodness has to be trained. Does that make sense? You can't train goodness in a universal world unless there's a shared field of value. Does that make sense? Does that make sense, everyone? It's beautiful. Let's go. Let's stay close. It's beautiful. Unless there's a shared field of value, right, which has a shared sense of what goodness means, you with me? Unless that exists, you can't actually train goodness. And since we're in a global world where we all collide into each other, we're living in the unbearable intimacy of a global world where a virus, right, in the wet markets of Wuhan, or a lab leak in Wuhan, China, right, causes COVID all over the world. Does that make sense? We're unbearably intimate with each other. We need to actually train in a shared data set of goodness, a shared interior training of goodness, which means there has to be a shared field of value. There has to be a shared deeper truth. So the people who led the atheist schools, right, of the last decades, people like Derek Parfit was a great moral realist from Oxford, and kind of his students are people like Sam Harris or Nick Bostrom or, that gang. They thought we'll make it through without saying there's a shared deeper truth. We'll make it through as materialists because they just assumed we could kind of get to a sense of shared good. We now realize that's not true. It's quite clear in the world today that actually, absent a powerful and potent experience of value, which can actually stand against postmodernism, on the one hand, the postmodern emptying of value, the postmodern deconstruction of value, And it can stand against fundamentalism, which is also the hijacking of value to my particular group, God speaking value only to me. Neither of those are in the field of value. Postmodernism is not in the field of value, and fundamentalism is not in the field of value. Unless we reestablish a shared field of value, we can't actually have institutions that we trust. We can't have a shared discourse. We can't have an information ecology, in which case we have utter polarization and the entire thing collapses. It's a big deal. So part of the shared field of value, let's weave it together now. So part of the shared field of value is that the purpose of a human life is transformation. That the effort towards my transformation is one of the essential purposes of existence. We are here to transform. A. B, transformation's unique. It's not just generic. Eli and I were just talking about that the other day. Transformation is not just generic. No, it's my unique transformation. So I'm here for my unique transformation. Now let's put it together. And I don't complete my unique transformation in one lifetime. Hello. It doesn't happen. So therefore, I'm incomplete at the end of my life. I haven't actually fulfilled my mission, my purpose. So the lineages have this direct access to this direct knowing. Therefore, I understand implicitly that there must be continuity of consciousness. So that's part of this third anthro-ontological knowing. Remember, we taught these four kinds of knowing: philosophical, right? Realization, mystical realization, transfiguration. Number one, philosophical knowing. Number two, transfigured knowing, transfiguration. Number three, anthro-ontological knowing. Number four, empirical knowing. These are the four doors, the four ways of knowing the continuity of consciousness. So this last one I just talked about, right? The realization that I've got to complete my lifetime, the direct knowing in my body that I'm not complete at the end of my life. Who can access that? Is there anyone who can access that who's here? Can you access this kind of direct knowing in your lifetime, right now, in the second, right here, right now, in your life, in your body? No, it's not complete. My friend Terry, can you get that, my brother? I get it, right? It's not complete. How did Dylan say it? You know, what a long, strange trip it's been, right? What a long, strange trip it's been. It's not complete. I know it right now. It's not Gafni's telling me. Who cares about Gafni? Right? No, I know it right now. This is what's called the pointing out instruction. I have direct knowing right now. It's not over. I'm not done. That sense of incompleteness and that desire to complete, to make it whole, that is an anthro-ontological knowing of the continuity of consciousness, of reincarnation, of the fact that I incarnate again. But here's the thing. I don't just incarnate again in this kind of bland, generic way. I incarnate again, not as Mark or Jack, not in my personality, but in my unique self, and the configuration of intimacy, the dynamic of intimacy and presence that is my unique self. Some dimension of that reincarnates. Maybe I was a man in this world and I'm a woman in the next world. That's a different conversation. We'll get to that next week, or the next time we talk about reincarnation. We're going to talk about man, woman. We're going to talk about human, animal. Really interesting. What's that about? Is it, isn't it? There's a lot more. We've just begun. But here we just have this direct anthro-ontological knowing. It's not over when it's over. I know that directly. Okay, I'm going to come again. I'm going to come again, right? But it's not Christ's second coming. It's my second coming. It's the Christ in me's second coming, so I can become Christed. Right? Does that make sense? Like, wow. Wow, it's so crazy good to be together, everyone. So crazy good to be together. And crazy, I'm the greatest honor and privilege of my life is for realsies, just to be with y'all. So like mad, thank you, mad love. You know, thank you. Take us home, Krista.
Thank you so much, Dr. Marc Gafni. Incredible. This is not the only lifetime that we get to share together, but it is an awesome lifetime and it's so good to be here together. So let's make this lifetime the best that we possibly can. And Marc shared in the beginning so beautifully about all the time that we have spent together at the Mystery School, at the board retreat. And so just inviting everyone to come together in person, because it's so important to actually know and feel and touch and love each other madly in real life, but also to really feel this energy building around the Center for World Philosophy and Religion We saw all the books that came out this year. And all of those books we created together here in One Mountain, Many Paths by placing our attention, by showing up here every week, by having the commitment to tell this new story of value for a new humanity together. And so I just want to ask everyone, please, please take that next step. If you haven't done it yet, sign up for the community Who We Must Become, because this is not only an awesome platform where we get to meet each other, get to know each other. You can see the other members having profiles, locate themselves all over the world, so we can even meet up locally and get to know each other. It's also an amazing study platform. You get access to 10 beautiful study courses. We have the study group right now, the book club, together with Christina M. Long, Jamie Long, and David Cicerci, studying every other Saturday together the new book that just came out, Homemade, the relationship of the future of relationships, excuse me. So that's an amazing opportunity to also be together. We have a daily prayer group together, praying together every day at 7:30 a.m. Eastern time. So there's many, many, many beautiful places to engage, to interact, to study, to practice together. But maybe even most importantly, it's a way to resource our home. It's a way to say yes. It's a way to, as they say, put your money where your mouth is, or where your heart is, and to show the world what you really care about and to step in. And we have an awesome, beautiful opportunity and offering to step in now as what we're calling a founding member. So you get a 50% discount. You can already join for $50 a month. And that really enables us to, as I said, resource our home, to create the next level of the Great Library. As you saw, we just published 38 books this year alone. Imagine what we can do with more resources. And I can tell you that was only the tip of the iceberg. There is so much more joy to come, so much more value that we have to share with the world, and so much more resources that we need to actually make this happen and to create the more beautiful world that we know is possible. So let's do it together. You can find the link in the chat box. Sign up now. And I can't wait to meet you on the inside and to be together, to study together, to love each other madly.